Welcome to the Made2Homeschool Podcast. I'm Brandon, and my wife Brigitte and I are the founders of Made2Homeschool. In this episode, I got to sit and chat with my friend Katie from Life in the Mundane. Katie's a homeschool mom of 6. She's been homeschooling for over 10 years, and she has a passion for helping homeschool moms find confidence and clarity in their calling through sharing reliable resources and strategies on her channel on YouTube, Life in the Mundane. I loved having this conversation, not just because Katie's a friend of ours, but because she's going to tell you exactly what she thinks, and you're usually going to come away having learned something from it. I think you're going to get something out of this as well. Let's get into it. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today, for making the time for this conversation. I feel like I know you pretty well because I get to talk with you a lot about all the Made2Homeschool things. But I'm excited for folks in the audience to get to know a little bit more about you, your homeschool situation. If I could, would you let me start by just asking you how you guys as a family came to the decision that homeschool was right for your family? What was that process like? How'd you land there? Share about that.
Yeah, so for us, we're a little unique in the sense that both my husband and myself are second generation homeschoolers. So I grew up, I had a fantastic homeschooling experience. I knew from the get-go, this is what I was going to do. And my husband was homeschooled, and he didn't really have like a positive or a negative experience. It was sort of neutral. And he was like, I'm open, but like it wasn't a slam dunk for him. So when I was so passionate about it, he's like, okay, I guess that's fine. Was the initial kind of thought process there. So we started homeschooling, and shortly after we started, there were some other things that came up in our life. And so we had to do private school for a while. And over time and after refining and all sorts of things that God worked on in our hearts, we came back to homeschooling and have both are equally as passionate about it now. So it's really neat to see how he was open to it. And now God has kind of put us on the same page in that way.
And wait, how long have y'all been doing it?
So we have been doing it for over 10 years. I think this is our 11th year. It gets a little muddy sometimes trying to count numbers, whether you start like pre-K or kindergarten or what.
Yeah, sure, right. It's like, well, I've been homeschooling since my child was born. I taught them how to like, yeah. So you've been doing it for 10 or 11 years. Yeah. Have you found that your approach, your educational approach has changed much over the years? What is your educational approach, and how did you arrive there?
Yeah. So for us, I was really big on research. We were going to homeschool conventions before we were even married. Like when we were engaged, we went to our first homeschool convention, and people would ask, they're like, how old's your baby? And I'm like, we're not married yet. Anyways, it was really funny. They just looked at me like I had 3 heads. But my philosophy and my idea was that I knew there was a ton to learn, and I wanted to absorb as much information as I could and kind of get a head start on the game. So because of that, I did a ton of research into the different philosophies, into classical education and Charlotte Mason and all the things, and read all of the books and had decided what my philosophy was going to be. And you make plans and God laughs, because none of that is at all how I homeschool anymore. I had really decided on more of a Charlotte Mason basis was what I really wanted to do and what I desired. I wanted a little bit more academically focused and allowing learning and experiences to happen, but to really choose to do that maybe a little bit more rigorously. And then God blessed us with several children with learning struggles. And that was just not the way they learned. There was a lot of challenges that came up with that. And really, I think one of the beautiful things about homeschooling is even people who follow philosophy don't actually follow it fully. They always mold and adjust to their specific family. And we continued over the years to do that. And so some years I looked more traditional, and some years it looked more Charlotte Mason, and some years it looked more classical. And now it's so molded to our family, I don't even think you can tell what it is. So we just say eclectic in our home.
I love that. So, but it's evolved over time, basically, to meet the needs of your kids.
Mm-hmm. And year to year. So one of the years we were in the process of selling our home, I had 5 young kids and was pregnant. We were having, I think we had somewhere around 60 showings of our home in 30 days. And so we were just constantly being yanked out of the home back and forth for showings. And so I went to like all workbook based for a season because I couldn't do like hands-on experiments and keep my house clean to do showings. And so it's been times where it's been a whole year has been one method, and other times where a few months have been one method. So it's just, we're very flexible in our home.
You know, Katie, when you were answering that initially, one of the things you said, and I wrote it down, was that God blessed us with several kids with learning difficulties, I think is how you said it. I know that you are juggling a million things, including kids with special needs that you're homeschooling. But what's funny is, and I was struck by this just the way you said that, I've never heard you speak about it the way so many would, because, you know, you expect people to kind of respond with, "Oh, how is that? Are you okay? Is that, gosh, that must be hard." And I've even heard homeschool parents that have been told, "Oh, you really shouldn't try to do that by yourself. You can't, you're not able," basically, right? I've never, and I'm realizing this, I've never heard you not only say anything like that, but all I've ever heard from you is positive about your kids. And I love that, just as a friend, as a human, knowing that they're children of the living king, like the way you talk about them is wonderful. But right here, you just said God blessed you with them. Can you tell me why it's a blessing that God gave you your kids the way they are?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many blessings there. Just the fact that they're human beings that are uniquely and wonderfully made in the image of God, that's a blessing. But I think it's humbled me significantly because I came in with this attitude of like, I'm going to master this. I am going to do really well. I'm going to get ahead of the game. I'm going to do all this research. I'm going to know exactly what I'm doing. I'm a second generation homeschooler. I saw all the mistakes and I can fix them. And God's like, well, let's see about that. And everything that I planned went out the window. And so it's been a real blessing because I have come not only to realize that my plans are not the perfect plans and that I 100% need God every single day. It is very, very hard to homeschool kids with special learning needs. I'm not sugarcoating that whatsoever, but it drives you to a next level dependence on Christ that I think is hard to get in other situations. And that in and of itself is a huge blessing. And it's a blessing too, because it forces you in a good way to become an absolute student of your child. And I think all homeschool parents, whether you have special needs kids or not, should be students of their own students. They should be looking for what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what makes them tick, what's encouraging to them. I have one kid that words of affirmation are everything to him. You know, if you're just like, hey, you did a great job, that's awesome, way to go, this is great. But also on the flip side of that, one negative, like, oh, I can't believe you did that, could just like totally tear them down. And so knowing those things about my kids helps me to be a better teacher to them and a better parent.
And Katie, you've said several things just in that last response that related to your faith. And I think you know that part of the reason that Brigitte, that's my wife for those listening or who are new here, Brigitte and I love you guys, you and Mark, so much that we consider you guys friends. And why we trusted you so quickly, so early on, has to do with what we saw and heard consistently over time from you guys about your faith, how you actually walk it out, how you live the thing you say you believe. And I know we've talked about this, but I think this is an important thing for people to hear about. And not as it pertains to kids with special needs specifically, but maybe I just want to hear, and I want you to share with the audience, how do you incorporate your faith into your homeschool in such a way that it is applicable and not just academic?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny because there have been seasons where we don't even have like a formal Bible curriculum. Actually, I think this year or last year may have been the first time that like I had a formal Bible curriculum. Typically, we are just in the Word a lot with our kids. We usually open our day in the Word. We do end our day in family devotions. We'll sometimes read through a Psalms or Proverbs over lunch. So there's just a lot of like, honestly, bathing the day in God's Word. And opportunities for prayer. But I think the big thing is like homeschooling allows us to have this training ground. And it's funny because when we have all of our family together and we have all the siblings together, there's a lot of opportunity for conflict. I know that's not what you're expecting me to say, but there's a lot of opportunity for conflict. And with much opportunity for conflict is much opportunity for conflict resolution training. And I think that is something that has given us a lot of opportunity to bring Christ into everyday experiences. God created us to be in community. God created us to be around other people. And that's a messy thing because we are all sinners. And so I feel like it's one of the greatest opportunities to train them in life skills, but really in our practical application of our theology of how do we handle our differences? How do we handle our frustrations? How do we handle having to wait because someone else needs mom right now? That's a big problem that we have in our homeschool, and learning to sacrifice and to give sacrificially. And I love those learning opportunities that come up in our homeschool.
How did that parlay into, because I think most people, if they're familiar with you, will know you from YouTube, right? So how did your homeschool experience parlay into you creating YouTube content? When did that come along? What's the correlation there?
So, oh man, that's crazy. So for me, one of the things I noticed is that a lot of people knew that I was a second generation homeschooler. And so they figured I did have a lot of the stuff figured out. In reality, I don't. I'm just learning each day, but I'm happy to share my experiences, good and bad, and hopefully people can learn from that. And so what I noticed is I had a lot of people coming to me asking, hey, Katie, I have this friend who wants to start homeschooling. Could you talk to them? Could you like have coffee with them? Could you whatever? And I would do this, and I would end up doing this several times a week. And it became, and I loved it, and it's great, but it became hard to like squeeze that in and still prioritize the things that God had called me to do with my family and my husband and things like that. And so I was like, man, a lot of these questions are very similar. And I wish I could help answer these questions for people. And I could give them the same information, because sometimes I give something to Susie and then I talk to Sharon and be like, oh, I forgot to mention that. I should have said that. And so I was like, man, if only I could like record what I said, and then I could send it to him and I can be like, hey, if you have any questions, let's talk. And so it was really funny because it was not at all that I was like, let me be a YouTuber. Let me start this business. It was just like a way of being able to help minister to more people more effectively and be a good steward of my time. What I love is that it's turned into this thing I never even expected. And I'm able to do that now. And I love that. One of the things that as I got bigger on YouTube is that I struggled with, okay, I could give that same information to everybody and I could reach a lot more people and help a lot more families. But there is that need when you watch YouTube videos for more conversation about the topic or clarifying questions or whatever that is. And so I felt like that was always the missing piece to it, is people could watch this, but they always had additional questions. And I could never possibly make enough videos to answer every single question. So that's one of the things I've loved about Made2Homeschool is that people can watch the videos. They can get the information and then we can come and we can talk about it. And I know that's not the question you asked, but like really, truly, that is something that has been a big answer to something I've been feeling for a long time because of the size of the channel and where it's gotten to today.
Well, and that's, that was apparent to me early on. And if it's cool, I will ask you a few things about Made2Homeschool.
Yeah.
I think that, a lot of people may not know that you have you have been the most involved person, other than me and Brigitte, right? Like, in Made2Homeschool and helping to make it a reality. I've been so thankful for all of that. But maybe it would be helpful for folks to understand why that is. Because I think that when I've talked to people, like especially newer creators who are interested in joining the team or things like that, when I tell them you're super involved, they go, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I think like you just shared some of like what you have enjoyed about Made2Homeschool, but go like way back to like February, March.
Yeah.
We know where we are. You and I know. Why in the midst of all that, before there was anything, when I was just like, hey, we're going to make a thing and we don't know what it's going to look like or what it's called or what the color scheme is or anything, right? Why did you feel like this was the right thing for you to hitch your wagon to so much? What did that?
Okay, so there's a couple of answers to this question. One of those things is that I was praying a lot in December and in January, specifically. And like, God, I feel like you want me to do more. Like, I feel like there is something that you're wanting me to do, and I don't know what that is. And so I was like, am I supposed to write a book? Am I supposed to make a course? Am I like, what is this next step, beyond YouTube? I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. And I prayed about each of those opportunities, and I was just like, this is just not it. This is not it. And it was so funny because Anna over from Just Making It Work sent me this Instagram message, and she was like, hey, would you be willing to like talk to these people? They have this amazing idea. And, honestly, initially I was like, is this a scam? Like, what's going on?
Reasonable,
like, no.
Reasonable. Yeah.
I know these people. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll get on a meeting. And instantly in that meeting, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what God was kind of preparing my heart and my mind for. And so I can't really explain that a whole lot, but I do know several of the things that I loved about it is the fact that it is such a need in the homeschool community that we cannot homeschool by ourselves. Like I said, we were created to be in community. We were created to be around other people. We were created to have other, input and thoughts and perspectives, shared so that we can learn from each other. We can spur one another on. We can pray for one another. We can cry with each other. We can do these things. And I was like, this is something that I would love to offer, because there are so many people who don't have that locally, or they have a local community, but not a local community of homeschoolers. We have several people in the membership who are international, and that's just not an option for them. They would have to travel hours and hours away to be able to meet up with just one other homeschool family. And I wanted to be able to offer that and minister to them. I do think one other thing, though, this is a long answer to your question, but I think one other thing with all of this is that I wanted the opportunity to deepen that connection with other people and to really talk about things that would maybe be irrelevant on YouTube, or, unfortunately, YouTube is a world of trolls. There are a lot of well-meaning, wonderful homeschooling families that like, I want to speak to all of them. And then there are, unfortunately, those people who are just there to tear you down or to, criticize everything. And so the opportunity to be able to talk to like real people who really need that help and that encouragement, I have been able to be vulnerable in a way in this community that I can't be on YouTube because of protecting mental health and protecting our own families, privacy and care and stuff. And so it's been a real blessing in a way that I didn't even expect, to be able to share things that we're struggling with, to share prayer requests, and having the community actually praying for our family too, and not just an opportunity for me to minister back. So those are long answers. It's a lot of different things that all came together, but really, truly, it's something, the reason I'm so involved is because of how much I believe this is something that God was calling me to do.
Thank you I don't think you've ever shared that with me. I don't know, but thank you.
Probably not.
But I appreciate that a lot. Is that why you're still involved?
Yes, for sure. Like, the calling is for sure why I'm still involved. And my husband, like, being 100% of that too. Like, the whole time I'm constantly like, hey, are you still good with this? Like, are you still good with my involvement? And he's like, yes, this is what you're supposed to be doing. I know this is what you're supposed to be doing. So for sure the calling is like ultimately the thing. But the benefits, just like I said, it's just like this, to use an analogy, it's like an onion, right? And as you go through the layers, there's a lot of different things that I've come to like love and to be encouraged by and to enjoy. And I don't know, there's just been a lot of neat surprises throughout it that keep me so excited about this project. But ultimately God's calling is still definitely the primary reason.
I love that so much. What I'm curious is, as we're talking, and I don't know if I've asked you this before, and we talk a few times a week, like, so I don't know if I've asked you this before though, Katie. What is your hope for Made to Homeschool for the future? Like, what, I know what our vision is, right? To build a community of 100,000 homeschool families educating their children with quality and confidence. Great. But what do you hope the result of all this is?
I think my hope in all of it is that, I always say that, like, if God has called you to it, he'll equip you for it. But that is something that is very easy to lose sight of as a homeschooling parent. Homeschooling is hard. Like, I am not here to sugarcoat any aspect of this whatsoever. being homeschooled myself, homeschooling my own kids, special needs, neurotypical, all of those things. It is a hard, challenging thing. And Satan very easily comes in and like gets a foothold very easily when you are doing it alone. And when you are doing it maybe around an unsupportive community, if you have family members that are doubting you or, you know, whatever, and it's so easy for him to have a foothold. And so my hope with all of this is that we would be able to reach those 100,000 families, but in all of it, that we would help them to understand that God has equipped them for that we'd be able to reassure them in that moment, that we would be able to come alongside and say, you can do this, not because you can do this, but because God's called you to this. He's going to provide for you. And I think that is the biggest thing. And that's my biggest hope, is that they would see that your credentials may not match this calling. Your patience level, I promise you, does not match this calling. I don't care who you are. Everyone's always like, I could never homeschool. I'm not that patient. I'm like, none of us are. But in these moments, we get to see in our weakness how God is strong. And I want people to see that and to not get discouraged and not let Satan have that foothold, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. One of the things that I love about your response, it made me think about a kind of a personal bug I have in the ministry world, because your response wasn't, I want to help people. It wasn't that. It was more, okay, just, you know, like you're a pastor's kid, so ministry brain, you get it. Okay. So like people would talk about their ministry and like how, and I would, especially with like people who were newer to full-time ministry, young pastors, and I love the reminder that our role in full-time ministry was not to do all the ministry, it was to equip the saints for the work of the ministry.
Yes.
And I think that was the spirit of your answer.
No, it definitely is. That's how you would summarize it for sure, is that I want to help them feel equipped for what they're called to do. And we all get discouraged at points, and we all question like crazy if we're doing the right thing or we're doing it the right way or whatnot. And to be able to have people come alongside as a cheerleader, but more than that, of like being able to really help you in that situation. Because I feel like there's a lot in the homeschool culture that's like, you can do it. Like, you've got this. Like, nobody can homeschool nobody can school your kids as good as you can because you care about your kids more than these teachers do. And like, you know, there are actually some teachers that care about kids quite a bit, you know, and some parents, unfortunately, who don't care as much as they should. So to me, it's not any of those arguments. It is more so of that sense of, if God's called you to it, he's going to equip you for it.
Yeah, and I love that was in conversations that you were a part of early on, how we ended up with the name Made2Homeschool, because like if you were called to this, you were made for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that that's where we ended up and the direction we're going in. I do want to ask you a few rapid fire things before we close, but I'm going to ask you something else before I move into that. Because if I'm listening to you right now, Katie, you're listening to me, and this is the first time I've heard about M2H. I might be going, okay, what is so different from this from what I can get on the internet for free? And basically what my understanding from most homeschool families, well, especially where they get resources and what you might call community, is like Facebook groups, right? So like, why is this better than a Facebook group if I do not know you and I don't care who you are or what you think?
Yeah, I think, there are so many reasons.
Sorry, I know that's a big one.
No, I think one is just, you know, there's everything all in place. There's resources, there's workshops, there's a whole recording library of previous workshops. There's hangout sessions, and then also a part of that is the circles, which would be probably the closest connection you could make to a Facebook thing. So it's kind of funny because that's sort of like the extra to the meat. But even if you just take that one feature and you separate that from everything else, there's just not the negativity. It's not allowed, but it's never been an issue. And I think that's something that I love, is that like we always said there would be a zero tolerance for that. Like we're not going to allow people to degrade other people or put them down. But we have never, as admins, had that issue come up. And that's a beautiful thing to not even have to approach that, because the people who are there want to be there and they want that community. I was telling a friend the other day that one thing I love about Made2Homeschool is when it comes to the actual posts that people post in the circles. There's not like this feed of your own individual thoughts. Today I ate eggs and toast for breakfast. Today I read the kids this book. It's all posts that you make for the community. And so because of that, it drives people to make posts that are purposeful to help encourage the community, to instruct the community, to learn from the community. So everything is productive. Everything is purposeful and community driven instead of me. And whether they're contributors that post about that or whether they're just members that post about it, it's all others focused. And I love that.
Yeah, I think that's so big. It really is one of the things we wanted to achieve, is to have something that was like the unFacebook, where there were no trolls, and if a troll came sniffing around, they'd be gone real quick. And the general rule is just like, be kind. Don't be a jerk to people. And we've only, it's funny when you said that, I realized we've only had, that I can think of, because y'all reach out and tell me if it happens, 2 real like moderation issues where somebody posted something was like, oh yeah, that's either not kind or not honoring to somebody. And it was responded to with, I think, significant amount of grace. Hey, just an FYI, our guidelines say this because we want it to be this kind of community. Can you not, please don't do that in the future. Remove that one comment. And then like, it never came back up again. And those people are still in the community. Like that's kind of crazy. We launched in June. We've got hundreds of families represented in there. Yeah. And nobody's like stabbing each other like the rest of the internet.
No, absolutely not. And there's been such a response, like, and again, even those 2 moderation issues, because now that you said that, I know what you're talking about. Even those moderation issues were not negative towards anybody else.
No, they weren't. That's true. Yeah.
That's not the best wording or, whatever. And it was just like, we're a community. We're like a family. And there's this sense of, we're going to make mistakes. There's so much grace out there.
So much.
And I love the fact that things are addressed like personally. It's not like Facebook where you're like, block that person or, whatever. It's just like, hey, as a brother and sister in Christ, like we want to come to you with this. And there's always been a great response to that. So
yeah, that's super good. Okay. Rapid fire things, because I know you're on a limited amount of time here. On Made2Homeschool, and then we'll get off of it real quick. What has been, real quick, major question. What is your favorite kind of resource to create for Made2Homeschool?
I have really been enjoying getting into printables. Okay. So it's not something I've ever done before until Made2Homeschool. And then I've been kind of having fun experimenting and playing around with that and making interactive things that I'm using in my own homeschool. And I'm like, hey, this could help somebody else. Let's do that.
What is the favorite thing you've seen in the community? Like your favorite interaction you've seen that makes you go, oh yeah, I'm in the right place?
Oh, there's so many. Brandon, this is not a rapid fire question. I think it's just been really like actually having these people who have been viewers for a long time becoming actual friends. Like I would 100% consider them my friends. We talk on a regular basis. They send messages that they're praying for me. They ask how my daughter's doing. Like that's just really neat and nothing that could be duplicated online safely outside of something like this that is moderated and cared for.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that's one of the things that I wish more people realize is like all these creators who are contributors for Made2Homeschool, who are part of our like lead team, they're partially there because like they want to get to know their audience. And I'd love to see that actually happening. Like people actually like, oh my gosh, hey, and then like you guys get to chat and like DM each other or whatever. And it's
like
nice.
We came on the other day and we're like, oh my goodness, did you just get a haircut? And they were like, yeah, I did. And like, I love that. Like, I love that I know that one of the people I've been talking to online for years, like just got a haircut and she looks great, And so I think that's just really a fun level.
Better than YouTube comments.
Oh, for sure.
So, okay, off of the M2H thing real quick. What has been your greatest hurdle in your homeschooling journey?
Myself. Is that an answer?
It's good. It's good. That's a very totally depraved answer of you. Very good.
It is. Like, I think it's, me getting in the way, like me thinking I've got the plan or I've got to have it figured out before I get started. There have been years that I have delayed starting my homeschool by weeks sometimes because I'm like, but I don't have it figured out yet. And my husband's like, you're not called to have it figured out. You're just called to do it. Like, he says it with love. He says it much more loving than that. But that's the gist of it. And he's right. And so I think my biggest challenge has just been like putting that aside and just starting and being faithful in what God's called me to do with what I got. And, it can build and improve and get better later, but just showing up and stop trying to like get all my ducks in a row first.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for preparation, but also like you can't prepare for everything.
No, you can't. And most of the time, the years I have started feeling like killer prepared, within 6 weeks, we've ditched half of it anyways. So I'm learning.
Have you ever heard the phrase "do it afraid"?
Yes. 100%.
Sometimes we all need to hear that every now and then. So that's on the negative side. What about the positive side, Katie? What has been the most unexpected blessing in your homeschool journey?
Okay, so I think with this one, it's the light bulb moments. Okay, so we hear this all the time. It's so great to see my kid have these light bulb moments and they just get it. But somebody said, and I would totally credit them if I could remember who it was, but somebody said one time, and it just hit me between the eyes, is you would not even notice the light bulb moments or appreciate the light bulb moments if it had not been for the significant amount of struggle that had come before that. Like if you teach your kids the alphabet and they immediately get it, no problem. That's not a light bulb moment. Like we're not like, oh my goodness, that was amazing. We're just like, okay, awesome. Let's keep going. But when it's been a struggle for your kid to learn how to read, when it's been a struggle for your kid to be able to memorize this Bible verse or to grasp this concept, and then they're able to do it, the celebration is humongous. So I think the biggest benefit is the light bulb moments, but more so the struggle that comes before it to make you be able to enjoy those light bulb moments.
Katie, what is your biggest hot take as it pertains to the homeschool world? What's going to upset people that you believe to be true?
That we need to stop homeschooling in our PJs.
Wait, is that it? For real?
For real. That's
okay.
It. No, growing up homeschooled, I personally hated the whole stereotype that like, oh, all homeschoolers homeschool in their PJs. Oh, they can just take vacation whenever they want. And so as a mom, like kind of just to fight that agenda, I was like, we're not homeschooling our PJs. We might be comfortable. I'm not saying there's like no sweatpants. I'm not saying my kids don't come in costumes sometimes, but like we're not in our PJs. And originally it came very much from the perspective of like fighting the stereotype. But really after doing this for over a decade, I have realized there is a total attitude change and perspective change when you show up to work what God's called you to do, dressed appropriately for that. Now, sometimes that is with a cape, because what makes you feel better doing a math problem than wearing a cape, right? But if you're kind of like, I rolled out of bed and I'm desiring to go back to bed and I'm just thinking about bed and bed's on my mind the whole time because of what I'm wearing, it's a lot harder to do a good job. I love homeschool families. Even if you homeschool in your PJs, it's okay. But it is something that I do consider. We dress for the job we want, right? And we dress for our calling.
So you can homeschool in your PJs, but Katie says you're wrong. Basically.
That's not what I said.
No, I love that. And I think that's valuable, Katie. And we've talked about, I just brought our daughter home. I'm homeschooling a 4-year-old, right? And she, the other day, was down here. She came downstairs and she's got her t-shirt and underwear. I'm like, honey, you have to put on pants. But why, Daddy? I'm home. Yeah, but honey, you always have to wear pants. Always? Yes, honey. Always. Pants.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I actually love that, Katie. I think that'll be valuable to people. Where can they find you?
So yeah, you can find me several places. Made2Homeschool, obviously. I'm there a lot. But also on YouTube at Life of the Mundane, Instagram at Life of the Mundane.
Awesome. Katie, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on here.